You're listening to the Light Over Time podcast with David Sargent and Korey Bartos. It is August 20th, 2023, and it was a scorcher today. How are you?
I'm feeling great. We went to the beach today because it was indeed pretty hot.
Nice. I didn't even realize it was so hot today until a little bit ago when I went to get dinner. It went from like a normal temperature to like 12,000 degrees and super humid. From like noon to 6:30.
Yes, it did.
Oh, that's pretty wild. So what you drinking today?
This is a coffee from Hermitage Coffee. He's a roaster in Bel Air. I might have had this on one episode before. I'm still hanging on to this bag. It's a Congo coffee with notes of black tea, peach, and honey. And I did it in the Hario Switch, which is like a full immersion with also a drip filter system. It's kind of both in one, and I did it at like a stupid low ratio, like a 1:11 or something like that. So it is like super peachy and tea and strong. It's good.
Right on. Sounds pretty good. I don't think I've ever really brewed purposefully with that kind of ratio, but right on. That sounds pretty gnarly. It's evening, so I got to loot again. This is also probably the last time I will be recording any episode in this room, which is exciting. I should be in my apartment next week, or next weekend rather. So I'll be getting back Saturday, so we should be able to shoot the episode like normal. I'm going to call about getting internet in there this week, and if for some reason I do not have internet yet, I will try to get it off of my, neighbor. But we're doing good. What have you been shooting?
Yeah, so I had one job last weekend. I had a family shoot that I had set up a couple months prior, so we just banged it out. It was about 45 minutes, almost an hour. We had, let's see, 2, 4, 5 adults and 1 3-year-old, and those are always fun. The kids, it's always a challenge, especially when you have an expectation to do a full hour of a shooting, and a 3-year-old has about the attention span of maybe 7 minutes of it. So I find it fun to try and keep them engaged, because if I'm keeping them engaged, it makes all the adults in the room happy too, and everybody's got smiles as long as I'm doing a good job with that. And we did. One of my tricks is to let the kids fire off shots on the camera. I bring it up to them and let them push buttons, and as long as I know what they do and how to switch it back real quick if they did anything weird, they usually just like hearing the shutter fire. So I let them do that every once in a while, and we had smiles all around. So that was a good shoot. I returned those images next day. It was nice. And then I found a day to go to the river, which it's been a long summer of not doing that hardly ever. Yeah, so I had known for the past few days before leading up to that there were 3 white egrets, and they're never around. I've seen them twice ever where I go to the river down there, and only flybys too. Like, I've never seen them hanging around. And so they were there for days, and I was like, okay, there's 3 of them, and they're not gone yet. So I went out there as soon as I could, and they were there. Early in the morning they were there. There was a bunch of fog, so the conditions were interesting, and they hung around. So I got pictures of them, lots of other things, great blue heron, kingfisher, some deer, lots of activity that morning. So I was really happy to have been able to do that, because it's just a rare occasion anymore this summer. But as things slow down, I should be able to do that a little bit more often. And then next week I have a wedding, so I'm gearing up for that. It's a short one, though.
Yeah, right on. Cool. You're out there with your 150 to 600, I imagine?
Yeah.
Nice.
And I usually just take just one camera, one battery in that, because I don't really... I don't want to be switching it up too much. I like to kind of focus in. When I do wildlife, just hone in on that only. It's fun.
Cool. Right on. Sounds fun. I had a wild week, though today I do want to note that I ordered a Super Takumar 28mm f3.5 prime off of Facebook Marketplace for like $40.
Cool.
So that's pretty cool. It's one of the Pentax lenses that are M42 mount, like my Helios and like my Jupiter and my my mirror and all that. So I've been wanting to try and find something decently wide that's a prime and an old vintage lens, and that's the widest I found for the cheapest. Any of like the Mir
Sure.
20s or anything like that, they're super expensive. They're like, $350. You're getting into like normal modern lens prices when you get pretty wide with vintage stuff, just because they were challenging to make back in the day. But yeah, that's going to be pretty cool. I'm excited for that. I'd really, really like to dial in a video talking about vintage lenses soon, and the three that I use the most.
Do you
Uh,
have a use case for that lens? You're thinking of doing something with it specifically?
other than it being like the 28, I'm running right now for film. I'm running the Pentax Spotomatic F, and that's M42 mount. So, kind of just going to that like on a cheap budget kind of vibe.
Yeah.
28 mil on a 35 mil film camera.
Cool.
Um, I think it'll be fun. I've shot a lot at 58 the Helios. Like I've shot the
Mm,
Helios to death.
sure.
So I'd like to get that off. I didn't really love the 37. It's fine, but it's not too dissimilar. It's just like a little wider than the Helios. Um, so I figured it'd be cool to do some film stuff where I'm really getting the environment in, and things like that. So it should be pretty fun. I'm excited for it.
Sweet.
I'm about a few frames into this second roll that I have, and I'm really really hoping to ship it out in like a week or so. So I'm gonna kind of burn through this roll pretty fast. Shoot some dogs with it, and I don't know, maybe even do some stuff at work if we get out and do some things. There's already a couple of pretty good frames on there that I'm excited about. But yeah, so that's that. Film is a thing still kind of passively for me, so figured I'd note
Sure.
that. This last week I was in Connecticut, and I have some things to report on the experience. So I was shooting a thing called Tactical Rescue Challenge, and I was there for Connecticut SWAT Challenge as well, but I didn't really do a whole lot of photography for that. I was running a vendor booth, but so essentially kind of like a games event, right? A tournament of sorts. And I was trying to do my best to dual wield a pair of A7 IVs and shoot photo and video. I still managed in the day to get about 1,170 photos, uh, but I'm pretty disappointed, I'd say, in like my performance in that. I haven't been able to dig through all the video yet, and I really kind of focused on video, so I'm hoping that I got really really good video. Um, but I still haven't even like looked, I think, at like any of those clips. But there was another full time photographer only, so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna get
Oh,
photos
all
because I
right.
want them, but I want to try and focus on video. So I'm really hoping the video turned out. Um, but obviously the instant gratification of like looking at a bunch of photo files, it's a lot easier to do. So if you fall
Mhm.
short, um, you run the risk of feeling like you underperformed. So like there's not a whole lot of detail stuff that I was hoping that I'd have, and like there's just the action of the events themselves and like a couple of moments in between and stuff like that, and that's kind of I don't know. I just gotta hope that I really nailed some of the video. Some of the video is very challenging. Um, there's basically four, I guess like two event type scenario things, and then two, I would say CrossFit esque, like stations as well in the first part of the day. And I think I covered the CrossFit stuff pretty well, but the other two were really challenging. So there's two scenarios that happened on train cars. One of the trains was upright and normal. It was basically a shoot house where a team of three would go in. They had simunitions, which if you aren't familiar, it basically you change the bolt in the magazine of an actual firearm, and it shoots basically intense airsoft pellets. Um, but they kind of cartridge up the same as a normal gun, so you can run like exactly the gun you use, but with a specialized bolt and stuff, and it'll shoot these things
Mm.
called simunitions. And there's two bad guys with like little pistol simunition guns, and you basically had to like enter the thing, take out the two bogeys, and like work on this like $75,000 mannequin that had like a wireless tablet that would show its vitals, and it filled with blood every round. and you had to like get a tourniquet on there, and the person running the tablet would tell you if it was actually on correctly or not, and
Wow.
then you had to like exfil with this dummy that actually weighed like 200 pounds, like an adult man, and get him into a van and then take off. And then the other one was there's this specialized overturned train that's like built out on
I
its
think I saw
side. Yeah.
saw, saw that in the background of a photo.
Yeah. And so basically what they did is they had a similar dummy, not quite as sophisticated, but still very expensive. And it was a dog with a like severed leg, and it would like growl and stuff. And you actually had to like retrieve the dog from inside the train, take it all the way back out of the train, apply a tourniquet and muzzle it and stuff, and then run it to the exfil. And they would spray CS gas into the train in between each of the rounds, so there'd be fresh CS gas in there, which is kind of like intense pepper spray, in between pepper spray and like bear spray, kind of. Uh, and for a couple of the rounds, I was inside of the train with a gas mask on, with my skin just absolutely burning, to try and get some shots of like the dog being handed off inside of the train and stuff. And that was pretty cool. Thankfully, the gas mask worked well, so I didn't breathe it in. But man, like it felt like the most intense sunburn I've ever had on the back of my neck.
Wow.
And like later, I was sweating a little bit, and I wiped my mouth with my forearm, and it was like I ate a bunch of blazing wings, and my lips are just on fire.
Mm.
Um, but pretty wild for sure. We were a sponsor of that event. Our buddy Ben puts that on, and really, really wild competition. Lots of really talented and skillful guys. Um,
So
but
you documented that, but were you also taking part in the action of that as well?
no, no, no. So
Oh,
like
okay.
we trialed a handful of the events back at the shop to try and get times, what it should probably take, and if we needed to dial anything in. So I've done the like CrossFit style stuff, but I didn't do any of the rescuing or anything like that. Um, yeah, it was wild. It's a lot to shoot, and trying to juggle through. They're just cycling. Both train cars are doing events the whole time, and I more or less got free reign of however I wanted to shoot stuff. But
That's cool.
having never been there and not really knowing what to do, and being kind of I don't know, this or that, it was a little challenging.
Sure.
So I feel like I could have did a lot better, but um, there's always next year. I think we'll be doing it again next year. So
You said you had another photographer who was only focusing on photography.
yeah.
Is this someone who's on staff with you guys?
No, this was somebody that Ben knows out there in local to Connecticut, who's a pretty decent photographer. I followed him. Um, it was actually funny, and maybe this is a point too, because like I don't agree necessarily with it, but he says he runs Sony, but he had an old like Nikon DSLR with like a 70 to 200, and he takes that out when it's uh, like rougher stuff, and I was like, I don't I don't necessarily agree that I would ever get gear and then not use the good gear in like inclement weather or like
Oh,
gnarly
sure.
situations and stuff like that. And he was using this old DSLR, and I guess I didn't get it. His photos are fine and stuff. I think he was running a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200, but I just thought it kind of funny that it wasn't like it was that bad of an environment or anything. It was basically like
Sure.
ranges and like fixed stuff, but an interesting mentality nonetheless.
Hmm.
Seemed to be a decent shooter. And then there's a guy, Staff Sergeant Timothy Coster, who is like a guardsman and was doing photo video because it was on like a national disaster facility. That's where we were at, and so he was there shooting some video. They have a really cool website, DVIDS Hub or something like that. I can put the link down below, but all of these Army photo video guys, they'll upload stuff and it's all free domain. So like if you want to use it for like news or if you want to use it for anything, you can basically just go find all of this like material that they put out there, um, and like use it. There's a whole hub. It's a free login. You just register and then you can download stuff and use it for whatever you want. Creative Commons licensing, and I thought that was pretty cool because I had no idea that was the case. But
Hmm.
um, he's been doing that for quite a long time. He's been shooting for a long time. He was using like a Z6. It was a Z6 or a Z6 II, and I think he had like a 24 to 70, the F28S, and then some other stuff, and running a GoPro and things. But
Hmm.
they both seem to get some pretty cool stuff. He told me that he'd have a lot more on. I think the last time I looked, there was only 13 photos from this event, but I want to get some of his video and I want to use some of his clips because I know he got some video with this Nikon and stuff like that. Because I'll be doing a lot of the promotional stuff for next year's tactical rescue challenge. So I'll be making videos and stuff for Ben and on our Instagram and YouTube and stuff to try and promote to get people to sign up and do it next year. So
Nice.
um, but yeah, wild experience. Learned a lot. I didn't really shoot the rest of the week, but I wish I had because there was like way more events and stuff like that for CT SWAT Challenge. But maybe next year I'll try to slip away a little bit more often and do that.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds like it was a fun weekend.
It was wild, man. It was a lot of work, but still have plenty to do. Like I said, I haven't even looked through I think I have like 90 gigs of video from one day. I shot everything 4K 60 though, so I could slow anything down and have everything.
Cool.
I like shooting stuff like that because you can crank your shutter a little bit more. I find myself doing action and things like that. Sometimes I'll go up to like 1/500th of a second or something like that. And like the little bit more jittery look is advantageous.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I've often thought about how detrimental it is to like, because sometimes for me, I'm in situations where I don't necessarily intend to do video stuff. Like if I happen to see some wildlife and I think to myself like, oh, this would be cool to get a reel for or something, and not have an ND filter on me at all because it's just not something I think about. To have to crank that shutter speed way up to get it exposed correctly, and in my head I'm always thinking like, oh, this is gonna look just terrible. And then for some reason, maybe just like I'm not tuned in to the effects of that as much. It just never seems to bother me too much.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Speed.
Some people don't even care too much about like the soap opera effect on higher hertz televisions with like soap operas like General Hospital and stuff. I hate it. I absolutely hate the look of native 60 FPS content. Everything I shoot 60 FPS, I shoot for a 30p timeline. And I just let it cut half of the frames out.
Sure.
Or I use it so I can slow it down, right? But the crank shutter thing's really not a problem often. And sometimes when it is, say like you want it to smooth out and you want it to look nicer next to like clean native like 30p or something like that, you could always use what is it? Freaking not frame sampling, optical flow in like Premiere.
Yeah.
And that'll smooth it out a little bit, things like that. But I figure so long as I double it, normally it looks pretty good. Because you're at 1/25th of a second for 60p native, right? And then often when I do action, I'll be at least at 250, just to kind of freeze some more of the motion if I want to see like shell casings or stuff like that. Sure. I also did the same thing Friday. So Friday after work, right before I left for the trip, I went to a gym here called Gnarly Fit, and Loot Energy actually was doing their like launch event for this flavor, Wildberry, and they did a CrossFit golf. So basically, there's like 9 workouts, and they're all in stations, and there's a number that you have to hit, and every time you have to like make a new set rather than just like say it's like 75 wall balls or something. Every time you have to take a break, that's a stroke. And so you kind of go through all the things and then you tally up all your strokes, and it was teams of 2. It was pretty cool. So I shot I was nervous that I wouldn't be able to get anything for them before I left for my trip. So I shot it and I went home and edited a 60-second reel, both horizontal and vertical. And like chopped that up. I think I got done at like 1 a.m.
Oh.
And so that was pretty cool. But sometimes it's cool to push yourself and just be like, okay, can I turn around something from this event? And it looked pretty good. I was happy with it. The vertical one wasn't so great. I ran basically my 35 mil the whole time, and I wish I had used a zoom lens. because I would have liked getting more wide stuff. So I had to do a lot of like reframing just to make like
Hmm.
single shots work and things. So that was kind of a pain, but that worked out really well. But I shot a lot of that at 1/250th of a second, and it just kind of does. It makes it just look a little bit more kinetic, right? If you're doing like
Yeah.
wall balls or you got somebody like jump roping or something, and you're trying to like move around, they were doing. Um, like barbell stuff, and it was just cool to switch between and kind of make it seem really energetic, even though it was kind of just like stations of like little workouts. Um, Learned a
Cool.
lot during doing that too, because I'm definitely going to be probably, I'll definitely be at Gnarly Fit more, helping John, the owner of Loot Energy, is a trainer at Gnarly Fit.
Oh, nice.
So he's often over there. He runs a community class on Saturdays. If y'all are in the Kazoo area and you want to meet some people and do some cool workouts, that Saturday class is completely free. It's just like a community thing. You can go in there and do whatever workout they got planned for you that day. Stellar Gym. The owners of the gym are cool. Things like that. Not like a plug or anything. I'm not sponsored by Gnarly Fit or Loot for that matter, but um, I'll be working with them occasionally, and they're
Yeah.
cool local spot. Pretty wild. So one of the things that I kind of started a couple episodes ago and bailed on last episode was I wanted to try and have some kind of content highlight or things that you thought were cool in the space, whether it be photos or anything like that. I'll share one, and then if you got one, cool. If not, we'll try to plan for them in the future
Mm.
episodes. But I finally watched a Bad Flashes video, and that is Caleb, who is 50 Shades of Jason, or Grainy Days on YouTube. His friend Caleb.
Yeah.
Also, they do the Mummy Amigos podcast. Um, and I knew he was funny, Caleb, and I really like Jason's humor, but I didn't know how energetic he was. And I happened to catch a video because it was in my like homepage on YouTube, and he's super energetic. There's a lot of comedy in what he's doing, but he's like doing a lens review, but it's all film. So he's focusing on a modern M mount TT Artisan's lens in the video that I watched, and I'll link it down below. And it's a little 28 mil pancakey lens that he throws on his like M6 and stuff, and just really entertaining video. I had no business giving a hell about this lens or any of it, and there's a lot of he puts a lot of effort into it. So when he like tells a joke, there's like B-roll that supports the joke and stuff, and he goes out of his way to make that, and he just does a really good job at not just like talking heads or vlog footage. It's like it's a pretty good production.
Hmm.
um, some of the more interesting stuff I've seen, so that was like an instant sub because
Sure.
I haven't seen something like that in a while, where like he made a joke about something fitting in his mouth, and I can't remember what it was, but then he had B-roll of him literally putting it in his mouth in a funny way, and like it wasn't just like making jokes and doing a thing. It was like
Sure.
there was a lot of effort put into this video, and it's like 16 minutes long, and it probably didn't have to be, but he's just got a lot going on. It's cool.
So I do actually have something. I think or midweek, sometime midweek. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I was catching up on Ben Horn's last trip, which I was just looking up exactly what it was. I think it's Utah. Was it? Yep, Utah. So he's working in Utah, and well, he's back home now, but he does these series of videos, and his photography. If you're not aware, Ben Horn is a large format film photographer in the Southwest. So he goes, places in like oh man, Zion and places like that. Lots of red rock wall and very little like vegetation. But when you do find it, there's really cool angles you can take on it because it's pretty well isolated. That type of stuff. I was catching up on a lot of his most recent videos, and what I really like about Ben Horn is his just absolute commitment, not just to the craft of large format film photography, but to the craft of photography in general. Because this dude goes out to the same parks every year, like this is this year's Zion trip. This is this year's Utah trip, whatever place he's in Utah. He goes back to the same places. He finds the same subjects year over year over year. This dude, he's got years worth of trips on this channel now, where you could compare a series of videos like part 5, part 6, something like that, in Zion from one year to the next year to the next year. And it's interesting to me to see, and I do this with myself too, where I go often, is how things change, the environment changes, and then how you approach like the same subjects you've seen before. And watching him kind of work through this mentally and then physically actually like moving his tripod and trying different angles and going, you know what, I had this lens with this kind of focal length, and I was positioned this way, waiting for the sun to drop down below here to just get reflected light only, but I think I'm going to try it this way this year. And this dude puts together these box sets of images by the end of the year, which basically is his portfolio. And if you know this guy, he's not shooting 1,000 images on a trip. He's shooting like 8 or maybe 16, depending on how many sheets of film he brings. Like, you get essentially one shot, and he's lucky if he has enough film left over. And in his mind, he has to prepare for this. He's got, I don't know, a week to stay at a place, and he has in his head certain subjects to shoot. So if he takes a second shot, it's like he better have a good reason to do that. So it's really interesting to see year over year him either approach new subjects or just, if he goes off the path a little bit and finds something new. Because now we're getting into, like, I want to say like the 3rd or 4th year of him going back to some of these places. So I was catching up on Utah, and the guy's just a great storyteller too. When there's a little bit of dialogue, it's still good storytelling because visually he's really good at showing scale and the grand scale of things, him in these giant environments. And I think it's really fitting for someone working with large format film photography too. But he is so good at pulling detail shots with large format. He's not just getting the grand landscapes. I mean, he'll hone in on a small rock that just has a cool little detail. So Ben Horn, he's a cool dude. Check him out.
Right on. Yeah, large format certainly is something that I don't even have like a slight interest in doing. Mad respect to people who do it. I've seen some incredible work, and it just has a different like whole aesthetic feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it's tremendous sheets of film that create these incredibly, as much as you can scan it, you can get detail off it, right? But if you can get these enormous files off of these sheets of film. So the actual image reproduction is baffling.
And there's more commitment to the craft, man. Like the equipment is just so large.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. You have to take a lot of care, and it's not like you can just grab the camera and go, right? Like, you really have to plan out exactly what you're going to do with it, because every mile you walk, you're really burning a lot of energy to try and create something out of this, right? So this guy is putting down 5-10 miles every day that he's out there, which could be 4, 5, 6 days depending on the weather. So you're burning a lot of energy just for one photograph in a day. Sometimes you got to be very careful with what you do.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar and you're listening right now to what this might look like this is putting a rather large small backpack sized camera, often with bellows and stuff, on sticks, and like really dialing in exactly where you're going to put a camera and stuff. It's pretty tremendous. The sheets are what, 8 by something or something crazy, like they're huge. 10 by
8 by 10s I think is pretty common. And you're also often doing long exposures and waiting for the wind to drop because you're doing long exposures. So like the patience and persistence is pretty unreal. I mean, it's like you think of a landscape photographer as being committed to the craft. Digital, it just takes it way, way further. I mean, it takes a certain type of person.
Yeah, it's tremendous. I'll throw some images up of Ben Horn, and we'll tag that video and stuff in the show description if you're interested. And we've talked about him before on this podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, wild stuff. Yeah, super cool. I definitely want to get back out to Utah, so I'll probably have to check that episode out. Like again, I
Mm-hmm.
still talk so highly of how insane that trip was for me and how it changed my perspective on freaking life. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, if you're from the Midwest and you've never been to the Southwest, giant recommend.
Yeah.
Um, in the cool things category, Shure made probably the coolest, exciting audio accessory that I've never like wanted to jump on and buy a freaking audio accessory so fast, but it's called the MVX2U. It's essentially a tiny XLR USB interface, but it looks like it just goes on like the back end of a mic. It's tiny. So you can take this, like my XLR microphone, attach this little device, and go right into USB and have headphones off it. Um, Wild for like traveling and needing to do voiceover work and stuff. You know, I carry my Scarlett 2i2 with me if I know I need
Yeah.
audio, but this is nuts. I can throw a mic, a cable, a USB cable, and this little device operates off of phantom power from the computer.
Wow.
It's awesome. Super cool. It's like 129 bucks. XLR to USB right in the back of the microphone.
Huh.
I'll likely be getting one of these because it's super clutch. And like Shure makes pretty good stuff, so I have no reason to assume that it's going to be bad, especially with a dynamic microphone like mine.
Right. I
Um,
was going to ask you if you think there might be any trade-off with that kind of interface.
oh no, barely. I can't even imagine anything.
That you'd
As
notice.
far as like the bit rates and stuff I use to record like this podcast and stuff, I would grab one of those to do remote stuff all day long. That's super nuts.
Well, that's
Um,
cool. What kind of price point they talking about?
129.
Nice. Okay.
So I mean, it's a fully fledged phantom powered single channel interface. So like that's
Sweet.
pretty wild. Super into it.
Yeah.
Um, cool. We're already about halfway through the show. I got a few news things, some rumor things that I'm sure we'll spend a little bit of time talking about some of this stuff. So I'll start with some of the um, more simple ones, like Canon is starting to evaluate potential third party lenses, and I think it's weird that they're still being so cautious.
They
Like
are.
they're going on a case by case basis,
Yeah.
but like so they know they need to, but they're not just going to open the floodgates. And it looked like Mikey or somebody is going to have the first RF mount. I don't have that link here, but I saw it earlier after I had finished the document, and yeah, it just feels weird because I feel like the obvious would be to like get Sigma on board, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. I don't think they're just going to let that
Um,
happen.
the way that I think I'm interpreting this seems to be the same way. Maybe correct me if I'm totally off base here, but the way that Nikon's been approaching it, which is to say, you can make a lens for this system as long as you don't make a competing focal length or focal range type
I
of, like,
I
you
don't
can't make an
know.
85, you can't make a 7200. That's why Tamron is making these weirdo lenses, I think, to
I
get
don't
into
I don't
that
know if
kind of
that's
system.
I don't know if that's true because
You don't think
Nikon
so?
literally made all those lenses. They made the 17 to 28 and they made the 28 to 75, and so like that's a poor argument I guess for the Nikon, but the actual quotes from the Chinese executives,
Yeah, I
it seems
saw
a
that.
lot harder than like Nikon like kind
It
of opening it.
does. It's weird. It's weird. It's weird language. It seems like real pick and choosy. How is a manufacturer supposed to really plan for that,
Yeah.
right? Like, how's a
But I wonder if it's just going to be Chinese companies that are going to have access to it first, or what that
mm,
means. Because like I feel like they just add Sigma and people are buying like the R8 and stuff. Like they just do that. They allow the DGDN lenses onto the RF mount, and people are all of a sudden buying up like an R8 like crazy.
yeah. I think it would entice people for sure. It's really weird. I don't know because you look at Sony and they've had. Oh, I think Sony is a great example of how successful you can be opening up the system because they've sold tons of bodies and they do a great job offering the lenses that they make, but with the system is wide open as it is, I think it sells some of their lower end bodies as well for people who are super budget oriented. And something like, what is it, the R100 would be an awesome thing to be able to pair with a budget Sigma lens,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But we're also talking about brands like Rokinon and Samyang. It would be really great to see them be able to produce some lower end options for those systems, because there's a lot of people that just are not going to throw down thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
They just won't.
Yeah. And in a related topic, there was Petapixel also had a interview with the Sigma CEO Kazuto Yamaki about just like getting onto like the Nikon Z mount and stuff. And I won't go into like everything that they talked about, but definitely go read it because it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I did.
But talking about how different the Nikon communications are, and how like they're going to be able to use Nikon's chromatic aberration like built into the camera because they get that information, stuff like that. But it seems like they're also like slowly entering the Z mount too. Like they're like, we just did those 3 lenses. We're going to see how that goes. And they tried to press to ask about like the 18 to 50 even, and he was like, well, like I said, we're just going to stick to these 3 APS-C lenses and we'll see how it goes. But again, I also feel like Nikon is going to slam if you drop those Sigma DGDN lenses onto the Z mount. But it sounds like it's not going to be as easy as just kind of chucking them on there. So
yeah, it sounded like they had to fully redesign a communication system to be able to use those in-body features, which is, I mean, good on Sigma for putting the effort in. This is kind of what they need to be able to do to stay competitive, I would say. It's not like they aren't a value brand, because they are bringing top-notch value, but it's really cool to see them put the effort in when they truly, honestly, probably don't need to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like, they're gonna sell the lens no matter what, but it's really cool to see that effort.
Yeah, for sure. They're definitely, they've come a long way since their old gold ring plastic
I was just talking
loud
about that with
garbage. Yeah.
11 years ago, I was learning on a Sigma that basically just showed fuzzy purple everywhere,
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it on here quite a bit. So,
yeah.
I spent almost 4 years on a 17 to 50 f2.8. So,
but that's the thing. It's like they have stuck to that value forward approach for a long time, but at the same time, building on their experience and just making a better product time and time again. So now we're at a place where I'm still rocking Sigma because they're worth my time, right? Like I've invested my time in them to learn, and they grew as I grew, and I'm really happy with where they're at.
For sure. Yeah. I think if I were on a different system that had them, I'd be running a lot more Sigma stuff for sure.
And I think Sigma would be real smart if they're already in the phase of designing this new communication system for the Nikon system to hurry up and put out that 70 to 200 DGDN that they need badly to do, because that would be awesome to see go out into the Nikon space too. I would love one, honestly.
Yeah. Faux show. I do love the 70 to 200. And they're way overdue for one, so.
Yes, they are.
Another news thing that is a little perplexing and worrying to me. So, Panasonic has a couple more lenses that popped up on the roadmap, and they also are partnering with DJI doing LiDAR stuff for autofocus.
Oh, I don't know anything about this.
And so they got a partnership on, and LiDAR requires you to have an auxiliary piece of equipment. You need LiDAR sensors to be able to utilize LiDAR, right? And why it's making me nervous is they just did this huge push for phase detection. They've been very quiet since the S5 II, right? Super quiet. Like they brought 80 people to Japan, gave them all cameras, huge marketing push, and then nobody stuck to the cameras really, and it got super quiet.
Yeah.
And the LiDAR just makes me hope that they're not completely abandoning actively pushing forward to further improve their autofocus, because in my experience running it for a week, like It's close. It's pretty close. It's not quite as good. It's not as snappy as I'd like. That's kind of how I reported on it. Um, but it was exciting to me. Like I'm really, really, I was thinking an S1 2 would be right up my alley to,
Hmm.
bail out of a Sony and go back to some Lumix. And I'm not going to use LiDAR. I don't even like using an auxiliary monitor if I can help it, which is why I keep EVFs on all my cameras. So why would I want to put a device on my camera to have this LiDAR autofocus, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't looked too far into it beyond that, what it might be um, doing other than that, but I don't like that. I think LiDAR is really cool. I think it has some intense functionality that would be really incredible, especially for very specialized tasks for high speed stuff, and
Right.
it has a lot of potential for a lot of certain things. But it worries me that they're going to lean into it to make their video stuff like function better, and I don't like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll try and keep up with that development because that's something unique. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the DJI stuff for the Ronin 40 or whatever, it seems to work really well.
Okay.
Because I mean LiDAR technology is really wild. It's super sophisticated and it works really well. But again, it's not without needing, something on your hot shoe plugged into your camera to read those out and tell the camera how far it needs to focus and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
pretty wild. So I got a few rumors here. The first being we got pretty much an updated Nikon ZF spec list.
Yeah, in photos, did you see those?
Yep.
Did you see the photo of the rear of the camera with the screen flipped out?
Yeah.
Did you see what looked like a weird, maybe there was something strange about the image, but did it look to you like there was some like pad on the back of the camera that you might put your thumb on to like
Well,
adjust focus or something?
I thought it was a thing that was blacked out. I don't think necessarily that's the case.
Oh, you think maybe it's like serial number, model
Yeah.
number
Yeah.
markings? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that
Yeah.
makes more sense. Because I was like, what is that? I was wondering to myself, is this some added piece of capacitive touch hardware that helps assist in autofocus in some way, kind of like if the screen was just flipped back and you use your thumb to do that. I thought that could have been an interesting approach with the screen flipped out. I don't know how useful it would be, but that makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's I mean it looks pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
I still can't ever imagine myself using a camera without a joystick, but
And it's smaller than I imagined it would be.
it looks pretty small. Though I think didn't they say something about the person having really big hands? Something
Okay.
like that.
Maybe I
Uh,
didn't quite get that
I
far.
think there was a note about how the person taking the photos
Okay.
had exceptional like large hands.
All right.
Because I mean that's just a 35 mil prime in the photo.
I'll hold my judgment then.
Yeah. But I think it looks pretty sharp. It definitely looks like a vintage camera. It's pretty slick.
It's the design language that I kind of hoped Nikon would have committed to a little earlier on and not waited specifically for a ZF. We had the ZF-C, which I was like, I really like the look of that camera. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't. So I'm glad to see this that's coming. It seems to be right around the bend. I want to see more of it. It's just a personal thing, subjective thing. I like the way it looks. It looks like it's small, and I don't know. I mean, I've been considering it. It's not out of the realm of possibility that the A7C goes, and I want to jump into the ZF, whatever it ends up being. I did read some specs, but why don't you go over what you got?
I don't really care about the specs.
Okay,
It's
that's fair.
it's fine. There is, however, one feature that it has that is really interesting to me because I haven't seen it done on any modern camera yet.
Okay.
Which is it does in fact have dual card slots, but one's an SD and one's a micro SD.
Oh wow.
And so originally they thought it was going to be a single card, and then it was kind of slated or something that it looks like there's a micro SD and a full size SD, which is a really sophisticated way to pull that off if you're going to have a really small body. But you're going to lose a lot of folks because they'll be like, but it has one card, so why the hell would I use it? Micro
Wow.
SDs are not amazing. but they're reliable enough, I'd say. You know, people have been running them on GoPros for a long time and things like that, and they do hold
And
up.
drones. I mean, there's
Yeah,
professionals using drones, and they have one option.
yeah, and it works out okay, but uh, pretty wild. So
Yeah,
so
that is interesting.
that update will be pretty interesting. You know, all the other stuff is pretty standard ops. I mean, it's not too dissimilar from a Z6 II. When it comes to the LCD, some of the features for video photo, it's got 24 megapixel camera. Um, everything seems totally fine. Price point says 1999.
That's banger. If that's true,
yeah.
they're selling it.
Yeah. I think that's a great call. It looks like one of the bundles will be with the 40 mil f2, which I think is perfect. That's brilliant.
Cool.
Like that's exactly what you want. Is like
Run it.
I know a ton of professionals from the film days that ran like an M4 or something with a 40 mil, and they like a Voigtlander 40 mil on their freaking Leica, and did years of news and documentary photography. So it's pretty sick. I think it's
great.
Pretty cool. Obviously, the fully articulating screen is a nice way to keep it like a little bit more functional for more people. There's going to be some photo people that are like, I didn't need that, but I think it kind of needed it to really get like the broadest audience.
It's kind of a requirement at this point. If you're going to try and reach the masses, not putting it in is a statement piece, know, and you can't make that statement.
You have to be able to support
camera.
it. Yeah.
You really do. Yeah.
You have to be able to support why you didn't put a flippy screen on it in 2023.
Hasselblad can support that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fuji on the medium format cameras, they can support that decision. Nikon, I don't think is in the position to be making a mistake like that right now.
Yeah, not for this camera. So this could be the camera that gets people. This could be like their A7 III. Yeah. I could see a lot of creators using this because it has all the features a creator would need. I mean, 4K 60 cropped, but like all you need is 30 to make good content, right? And it's going to be a fantastic photo camera, but you'll be able to vlog with it, and it'll be smaller, and like it's a no-brainer. It looks like if all of that's true and that's the way it's going to be, so long as no egregious things happen with the launch, I think it's a pretty stellar option. Especially at that price point with that 40 mil, that'd be a cool little setup.
I'm trying to think, is the 24 megapixel sensor the same in the Z6 II?
I'm not sure. I don't know their sensors much.
I could be wrong, but I do think the Z6 uses a sensor like that. So I wouldn't be surprised because Nikon has a tradition of reusing sensors when it can. Yeah. Usually 2 generations, but I wouldn't be surprised if it pulled in that sensor. Yeah.
Well, and like it doesn't matter if it's a sensor from the last 4 years. Like it's plenty good, and it already says that the autofocus is improved from the Z5 and the Z6 II. So like, what else do you need?
Wow. Improved autofocus over the Z5, and this thing's coming in at $19.99.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't know what the ENEL15 battery is because I'm not too familiar with
I think that's standard
Nikon
right
stuff, but I don't know if that's what's in the Z like 7, Z6 or whatever.
I think it is.
I hope so, because otherwise, like, it looks good. It look like there's no red flags.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think we talked about this early this year that this is the camera I've been waiting. I mean, the Z8, everybody was waiting for the Z8, but I was also wanting them to make something like this if the Z8 wasn't going to be this thing. So it's cool to see them do it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the notes is that it's a better build quality compared to the ZFC as well. So if it is just a high quality like metal body, it's magnesium alloy, so it's going to be good. Hopefully it just is a solid, you could either get something like an A7 IV if you're trying to get your first full frame like creator camera, or you could get something like this, and that's stellar. Like that's, in my opinion, super huge for them.
For sure.
So very excited to see what happens with that, because like I said, you and I have been rooting for this since we even got wind of it, kind of. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty sick. But then there is speculation. There's like cues in the questioning that lead people to believe that perhaps Canon might be setting up to release a retro style camera, and that's super interesting to me because I'm a Canon boy. My first film camera was an A1. My first digital camera was a 7D, so I'm always looking for a reason to go back to Canon. They have so few reasons for me to right now. We'll have to see what like the R5 II and the maybe R6 III looks like, but they have a couple of bodies on the way and things like that. But we don't
Hmm.
talk too much about Canon on this show because they're not doing enough. Um, but that would be really compelling if for some reason we don't know this is coming and like
Yeah.
the ZF drops and then they're like, oh yeah, look at our like Canonet rangefinder. Like what if they do something like that? It'd be just absolutely out of left field.
Yeah.
So
I think it'd be pretty sick.
in the
Would
spirit
love to
of
see it.
in the spirit of a good competition, I would love to see
Hmm.
them clap back with something like that.
Absolutely.
And they can just fight that battle, and Sony will be over here because they're not even a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. I mean, they bought Minolta, right? So they have some designs they could reach back to. I don't know if they'd want to, but they're there.
right? It'd be fine, like a '90s, like really bad SLR shaped digital camera. They're like, it's basically the A77 or whatever. Just like, cool. And then the last kind of rumor set is that we do have a little bit more going on for the A7C2 and the A7CR. And what was good is the original pricing leaked at like €26.99 for the A7C2, and I was like, oh no. But it sounds
Yeah.
like it's closer to like 2K. It's going to be
Oh, good.
if they can bring that out at $19.99, man, and it compete directly with the ZF, that'd probably be really good for them.
Yeah,
Again,
that'd be huge
it'll
because the Ace, from what I can tell, it's an A7 IV with one card slot,
right.
basically.
So it can't be
It can't be the same price.
right. Like I was really hoping to see like 1798, like their other cameras in the same field, kind of right. Like that's
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I can
two-
definitely see
2K's
1999, but
2K's hard to swallow if they don't really bring it with that camera.
right, because you probably at this point could find a real lightly used A7 IV for around that price if you looked hard
if
enough.
you have a friend who's on the creator squad at B&H,
True.
it's $2,000,
Yeah, wow.
brand new.
Yeah,
So that's pretty brutal.
and so I also heard pricing for the R body. Is that also adjusted down? I mean, what is that? So is that looking like an A7R5
That's
price?
No, I mean not quite. It's north of 3.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, well, the A7R4 is like a $4,000 camera, right? We're talking
Four.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So we're talking like a grand less, but oof, it don't even shoot 8K. It don't even shoot 8K 24.
Yeah, that's going to be a camera I'm really interested in watching some real reviews on. Like Gerald Undone, I would love to see him push that and see, what thermal capabilities it has. Because if we're talking about
People ain't shooting
such a
video
small
on that
body.
thing. People ain't shooting video on that camera.
no, they shouldn't. But I
Yeah.
want to see it.
They're not gonna. It's gonna be so bad for it. It's gonna have as slow, if not slower, readout, and it's not gonna even be worth it because you can't even shoot it at 8K. So it'll be slow for no reason.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the, the I don't know, the Leica Q3 style.
Yeah.
I have a very large megapixel. I could throw a 28 mm or a 35 on here, and I have my walkabout camera probably.
Yeah, it's just kind of that balling out slow, but amazing stills camera, right?
Yeah. I mean, $3,400, man, is a lot of Skrilla, especially if it also has one card slot.
Yeah. Do we have pictures of those at all?
I mean, I think they like kind of sort of have the A7C2. I don't know how real it is or not, but I mean, it looks.
Do we assume they are both rangefinder style?
Yeah, I believe so. I think
Okay.
they're both the same.
Yeah, that's interesting. One thing I wasn't sure that I heard confirmation on. Do you know if they implemented the joystick at all on either of these?
They no, it's not. Yeah.
I was hoping, man.
Yeah, me too. So that's not on there. I can't remember if they're going the way of the Type A and SD card slot, but that could be a little compelling to me. I do have a 160 gig Type A card that I don't really use anymore now that I don't have the A7S III.
Yeah, I don't see why they wouldn't.
So that could be kind of neat on an A7CR. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I think the target market would be people like a Q3 style person who probably rocks a Prime, wants a carrying around camera that's not quite as big as an A7R5, doesn't need the 8K, doesn't need all that video stuff, and wants like a high megapixel shooter. Um,
Yeah,
I think it's probably going to be pretty sick. But again, it's just like they're niching down and like
that's quite niche.
kind of putting things in all these little boxes where I wish there was just one better camera. Like I just wish the A7R5 was like really solid. They're working on another video camera, and like I wish they weren't spreading it out so much, kind of like what Fuji did when they had like 19 SKUs all at one time.
Man, if the A7 IV just had a faster readout, it would be such an amazing camera, and I love it. But you're right. There is a need for. I mean, what would it be like? I don't know, the A9 III or something like. But even
Right.
that's niche, you know.
I can tell you right now, the only thing I need a camera to do is exactly what the A7 IV does, slightly faster
Yeah,
and no crop at 4K 60.
sure.
Otherwise, I'm really loving this camera. Like
Yeah.
I need it to have a full no crop, and this I'm using my work camera, and I apparently don't have it set to high because it I just there's a warning. I'm in an
Oh,
air conditioned room and there's a heat warning. It went away. That's weird. I've never seen that before live on the show. But yeah, so it's a shame that the A7C2 is basically just going to be this but worse.
Yeah, that's not compelling enough for me.
No.
It would have been a consideration if they added the thumbstick, the joystick, and it's just like one of those little things that my brain really wants. You know, it's like
Yeah.
a satisfying thing to use. I would be much more compelled to be dumping the A7C for the ZF, to be honest with you,
Right.
because
No, I agree. I completely agree. Because then at
seems
least
like
you
a satisfying camera to use.
right, you're gonna have the usability of having physical dials and having the retro vibe, and it'll be the camera that you want to go walk around with, and
Right.
could still shoot, brewing coffee and
Mm-hmm.
remote with that camera. You wouldn't need
Mhm.
your A7 IV. Your A7 IV would be like I got like a wedding for show right now, or I'm doing like wildlife or whatever, like cool. But I
You're
mean,
right.
this could be your door to just shooting Nikon again, to be honest. But
And I'm curious if this doesn't, in fact, share the same sensor as the Z6 II, which, by all accounts, Nikon's got great sensors in those cameras. But at 24 megapixels, you're talking about a bigger pixel pitch. It might actually perform better in low light than the A7 IV. Now, we're talking about such a subtle difference here, but it's something that I kind of pay attention to. So
yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
know, man. I'm very interested. So do we have a date for that ZF actually?
I do
was
not
curious
believe. I don't believe there's a date, but I do want to make a note
announcement.
that it says 24.4 megapixel backside illuminated CMOS
Yeah.
sensor, and when you go to the Z6 II, it refers to its sensor as a 24.5 megapixel.
Okay, well,
And
that's a distinction. That's
it-
interesting.
Right, and it could just be a typo. It could just be a subtle typo in the rumor or whatever. But
Or they
it's-
could be a
but it also-
down version of the same sensor.
But it also says that it's just a CMOS sensor. So this could be a completely.
Whoa.
So this says that it's a backside illuminated sensor. It's not saying that on the official Nikon site for the tech specs.
Do
of the
they
Z6 II.
seriously make cameras right now that don't have BSI sensors?
Bro, this
I thought that was honestly standard on a modern camera anymore.
this is an old camera.
The
You know-
Z6 II?
Yeah, it's like $1,700 new. This thing's been out forever.
What's forever?
It's been a couple years.
Well, the D850 had a BSI. I mean, that was cutting edge at the time.
Yeah,
but-
this came out in 2020. This isn't like the Z6 II is an old camera.
Wow.
And there's other brands that like there's some Canon sensors that are out right now that still don't have backside illuminated sensors and stuff.
Is that right? News to me.
But yeah, like the Z6 II, it's long in the tooth. Like it's
Well, one of the things that's nice about the BSI sensor is it handles shadows so well. And I guess I've been lucky enough to be using a BSI sensor in every camera I've had since the D850. So I'm curious to see how that would perform in low light now that you say that, if it's not in fact a backside illuminated sensor. That's interesting.
right. So those two details make me assume that this has a newer sensor than the Z6 II. which is cool. Good for them.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about it. It makes the idea. Okay, hold on. That's interesting. Okay, I don't know why they don't put BSI on the official page. If you go to their like the list of all of them,
Mm.
it's definitely a BSI sensor. I don't know
Oh,
why that wouldn't
okay.
be in the tech specs sheet.
Right. Yeah.
So that's good. But the Z5 isn't. So the Z5 is a 24.3 megapixel sensor, and the Z6 is a 24.5. So this could still be a different sensor. Um,
Yeah, that's very interesting.
if it is in fact the difference between 24.5 and 24.3.
I wonder if it works the same way like a processor does, where you have something you've designed it for at the top end, like the Z62 or whatever has 24 point whatever higher number, and then they bin it down for the next, and then the next, and then the next. I wonder if they can use the same processing materials to make those sensors and just bin it down for the next generation of camera.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure Sony is the one that makes them. So
Yeah, I think you're right. That would be a question for them, I suppose.
yeah, indeed. But yeah, so that's. I'm just excited.
Yeah, there's cool stuff on
I
the way.
I want them. I want them to really crush that because if it has two card slots, dude, I might be interested in it. Like if it does the freaking micro SD for whatever reason and a full
And
size
micro
SD.
SDs are cheap too. You can get a chonker of a card for not much money.
Yeah, but if you're still trying to get like V90 or something, they're still kind of costly.
Yeah, I suppose I haven't been in the market for a high performance micro SD. What are we
Yeah.
talking, do you know?
I'm trying to look really fast, see if I could pull one up. Yeah, I mean, you're still looking at potentially up to like $100.
Oh, that's really not that bad though.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're only going to buy one or two, it's
Yeah.
not too bad of an investment.
120. Oh, that's 25% off. Um, I forgot that there's just so many janky brands that make them though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I wouldn't trust half of these cards.
Right.
Um, I don't have it in the dock, but I think there's also a class action lawsuit against freaking Western Digital because of all of those SanDisk 4 terabyte that just didn't work. Did you ever catch that?
I might not
They,
have.
they were like liquidating them for like 40% off, like during Black Friday, during Christmas, during
Oh.
Memorial Day, like for the last like 8 months or something. They've like been liquidating these 4 terabyte external SSDs, and there's so many creators on Twitter were going crazy. They're like, don't get these. I've had 3 already die instantly. Like
Wow.
they're just like dying and super bad. And Western Digital owns SanDisk, so
Oh, that's news to me. Okay, because I heard you say that and I was a little confused.
yeah. So the Western Digital is the parent company for SanDisk. So
Got it.
there's a class action lawsuit going through because somebody is suing them because they were pushing these 4 terabyte freaking SanDisk SSDs for months, like really knowing that they're egregiously bad and failing left and right.
Boy, if there's a class action and that's proven to be true, that's huge.
Yeah.
And the sucky thing is Western Digital way back in the day used to be like the trusted brand, and now I don't think most people touch them knowing that they pull off stuff like this.
That's pretty
Sucks.
bad. Yeah. I mean, I still use up until my last computer build, I was still using Western Digital SSDs in all my builds. And then I use SanDisk cards. Like I use SanDisk Extremes for almost everything I do.
Yeah,
Right
me too
now,
as well.
right now I'm on a set of Lexars because I had them, and I don't have 2 cameras anymore. So, but my work camera has UHS-2, V90, SanDisk Extremes in them. So
Hmm.
yeah, pretty wild.
Yeah.
I'll probably have to find that link so I can throw it in there so people can read that. But um, anyway, that was a lot. It was a dense episode. If you're still listening, thank you. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anything like that and you want to leave us a review, that'd be pretty cool. If you want to share this with somebody who's also a nerd, if we said something egregiously wrong and you want to just completely poo-poo us in the comments, I think you should do that too. Let's talk. Yeah. It was a good episode.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with calling us out if we get anything wrong, right? We would love to hear what you got to say
Yeah.
if we misinform you, because we like to learn, right?
Yeah, I would love, in fact, if you could find every mishap I had in my last 25 episodes and make a 45-minute video basically just outlining how I'm bad at my job and I shouldn't be taken seriously. That'd be really really good.
Helpful. Please do that.
Uh
Oh.
if you don't know what we're talking about, Linus Tech Tips is under fire at the moment, and if you're curious, go look into that because it's a pretty wild time for everyone involved. So yeah, it was great talking. I do need to plug one last thing, which is our portrait photo share will be next weekend. You have 1 week to basically send to lotpodsubmissions@gmail.com a portrait, and we'll share it on the show. It'll be up on the screen on the YouTube version of the show, and we'll share one of our own. David and I will, and we'll just kind of talk about them and say what we like about them and stuff. It's a
Yeah.
pretty good time.
If you want to provide information, context, metadata, anything, please do. If you don't want us to know a single thing about it, that's okay. We'll just ponder.
Yeah, it's not a critique. It's just for fun, and we like to share people's art. So feel free to take part.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll be in a new location next week, but we'll be recording next Sunday. So have a good one.
Yeah, that's it for me. See you guys.
Bye.